Welcome, everybody. This is Tito Ruiz, and welcome to Unite Now, where we are having conversations at the intersection of leadership and flourishing. And today we have an incredible one for you because we are introducing to the world our brand new CEO, DeVante Hudson, here in person. And so we are going to get to talk to him and get to know more about him so that you get to know more about him. And hopefully, we hope that you get to meet him in person at some Unite events in the very near future. But also, we have in the virtual room Ruth Evans, our executive director for Unite. Hello, Ruth. Hello, Devante.
Hello.
All
Hey,
righty, so
hey.
let's begin. Devante, welcome. Thank you for agreeing to talk with us today and just introduce yourself to the world. So why don't you tell us a little bit about you? Who are you? Where do you come from? Who's Devante Hudson?
Yeah, yeah. Well, first, thank you, Tito, and Unite in general. Thank you, Ruth, and it's been kind of great. The last couple days, Ruth has been asking me, "Have you been drinking out of a fire hydrant so far?" And I can't say that just yet, but it is really great to be with you guys and just to be a part of this family. But I guess big big overview. Let's just take a 40,000 foot look at this. I am a small city boy from Youngstown, Ohio. That's a manufacturing town, born and raised. My parents are amazing and had given me and afforded me a great opportunity just to thrive, even as growing up and to excel. But I am a church boy. I say I grew up Baptist Tito. Like
Mm,
there's like kind of a marriage there between the Pentecostal world that I grew up in and then non-denominational world, which tends to take a denominational side, right? So the non-denomination side was Baptist. And so that was kind of my upbringing, rooted, grounded in church and ministry and the things of God and kind of church world. So yeah, and found my way somehow down here to Atlanta, and I haven't left since. So
so when you go to the Pentecostal world, they say you're too
yes,
Baptist. When you go to the Baptist world, they say you're too
yes,
Pentecostal.
I can't make up my mind.
So how long have you been in the Atlanta area,
Atlanta,
Devante?
school brought me here to Atlanta. I attended Morehouse College, um, and I loved it. It was an amazing experience. But that's what brought me here to Atlanta. Never knew what an HBCU was. Never heard of an HBCU, um, and it was kind of a divine thing. It was a divine moment that God brought me to Atlanta. I just real quick. I remember touring Atlanta for the first time in high school, and me and my fathers are kind of walking, touring, and we stepped back for a moment, and we kind of took a deep breath. And he looked at me. I looked at him. He said, "This is it, right?" I said, "Yeah, this is it. This is it." So this place, Atlanta, really is speaks to me. It has a place in my heart, and yeah, I've been here for 11 years now, so I haven't left. I haven't been able to escape Atlanta. That's not a bad thing. So
Yes, because we got a chance to meet you here,
yeah.
and now you're stuck even longer within the Atlanta area. And what has been your journey in to that has gotten you into this point of working with in relationships and collaboration with other leaders? What has been your journey um,
Mm.
in this area of your life?
Yeah. I guess in general, I'll say that relationships have kind of surrounded my life. And whether I acknowledged it or not, it was instrumental in my development. I kind of hold this notion and this saying for me that most of the lessons that I've learned in life, I've observed. Um, and some I've experienced, but most I've observed, and that's because I've had people around me who were accountable to my development. Um, I was young when my father gave me a mentor. I was in sixth grade when my father gave me a mentor. Early understandings of what relational development looks like. that is still a close friend and brother to this day. But again, relationships have kind of followed me throughout my life and ministry. And I got started in ministry very early, at a young age, like 17. I was kind of preaching in ministry. And but that whole time, kind of doing church, growing up in church, you kind of just do it. You just do church. You understand the mechanics of it. And you just kind of show up. But it wasn't relational to me. As far as church, I had relationship, but it wasn't relational. God was not relational. God was more of, a weekend thing and just showing up to make sure that you check the box for attendance and tithe, right? And so that was kind of my understanding of God. But relationally, some of those things that really didn't kick in until I came around a group of brothers during college that really shaped and shifted my idea of what God meant for relational ministry. We were part of a really thriving ministry in college, but these guys kind of huddled around me. We were accountable to each other. And not just accountable to show up for a service or Bible study. We were accountable for walking in life with each other, which is completely different to me than what I've understood church to be. Knew God, but had understanding of a knowledge of God, but didn't really have a relationship in that way. And so that kind of always threads that kind of followed me throughout my life. Having relationships, having people around me that kind of sheltered, protected me, that not really equating to me as God, as the presence of God. So just kind of walking that life, walking those relationships, and kind of being intentionally thrusted into this new aspect of seeing God through people and through the work in the hands of people. So
what has your experience been as far as sort of engagement out in community?
That takes kind of two different realities, because I have had this kind of political influence in my life. When I say that, back in high school, I was a part of a week-long simulation called Boy State in Ohio. And if anybody knows what a Boy State program or even a Girl State program is, it's a week-intensive simulation that tries to give students an understanding of what civic government looks like, governance. And I had no idea what this program was, but it was my introduction. I say this was my introduction to the reality of mobilization and how one mobilizes, but how one connects with people and communities. Again, it was political in nature, but it was really a strong introduction to that. Another part of that was kind of just my ministry. As a young age, the ability to communicate and mobilize people through communication, the Word of God, were kind of just two worlds that kind of collided at a young age for me, where I realized that there was something that I was called to do that was bigger than me. I was called to people, to communities that maybe I had not even touched, I've never seen yet, but God was calling me to that. And so those two worlds, it's kind of this political climate and this teaching, and then the ministry kind of collided. And so after that, just kind of through odd end things, especially during my development in college, I kind of found myself in spaces and rooms with people that was totally connected to the communities around us. I came down to Morehouse, and I don't know how I ended up doing campaigns and doing rallies and marches for communities and people, especially when back in 2010, 2011, when we had the whole Occupy Wall Street movement happening. I was a student and sending students and marching to the Federal Reserve Bank down here in Midtown Atlanta. I mean, just galvanizing people. And so these are just introductions for me in ways that I've kind of been able to develop my community engagement in that world that I've seen. I've worked and raised money for campaigns and people. And so there was always a connection there. But it wasn't until I started working in full-time ministry that I really was able to exercise what that looked like in a Christian context. That using and exuding from the church the ability to mobilize and galvanize and connect with people. We always talk about the Imago Dei and seeing the image of God in people, but it was different when I was able to engage in a senior leadership role with people, connecting with people for the sake of the gospel, for the sake of what I like. I'm going to adopt our language now, flourishing. I wouldn't have called it that then, but I love that because it is flourishing. It was for the holistic development of people. And so my work as, Senior Director of Community Engagement at New Mercies and also Executive Director for a nonprofit that was connected to our church, I really got in the trenches there. Again, had experience mobilizing, generating, and moving people, but this was a different because it took intentionality. It took real relationships to help and to move the needle for how we allow the church to engage the community, but then also how we really looked at the church universally, how we showed up in the community.
I see that this area of your this journey has been exactly that. It turned into a calling, not necessarily a program in your life. That if it doesn't work out, you go to the next thing. That's heavy for me because it's been a huge lesson for me to act based on my convictions, not on the next thing that's going to take me to the other thing, and that's very impressive. And I wanted to ask you, based on your experience, seeing the church and the nonprofit world and the community engagement, what have you seen in Atlanta in regards to the relationship to the church and the community, kind of the state of the church, and then what would you like to see, especially now with the platform that you have as the CEO of an organization like Unite?
I think we do need a really holistic view and state of the church, right? I think a lot of people are giving states of the church and in relation to culture, and I see the church as still one of the most vital and necessary entities and movements, organisms. I'm very intentional by saying organism, not an organization. An organism that is still called to the world. I believe that is intrinsic. If we, I grew up playing football, and so you have to remember the last thing that the quarterback said before you leave the huddle, right? And the last thing that our quarterback, right, that Jesus Christ said before leaving our huddle here on earth is that we should go out, that we should make disciples. That we should go to the four corners of the world and bring them into relationship, teach them what I have given you, and that still stands. The church, she is the bedrock, the foundation for all that is righteous and good in this world, for what it's supposed to be. I think, unfortunately, given culture and kind of where we have been, especially recently in our world, and I'll say this in the last couple of decades. The church, I feel, has lost ground in some key public spaces, right? And I actually was sharing this, me and Ruth were talking not too long ago about public squares. Where are the public squares in our society, in our world? That used to be the church, literally. You used to have communities built physically around churches, that everything faced, that all life, society, life came out of the church. Economic development, educational development, whatever, spiritual development. All these things were found in the church. And I think culturally things have kind of shifted to where, perspectives have changed, society's become more open, which I don't think is a threat to the church, but I think is the church. Sometimes we have failed to live up to the things that we have said that we are supposed to be doing, which is loving people, which is caring for those, which is looking out for the orphan, the widow, and the stranger, right? Those things that God has called us to do. And so I think we're in a very critical state, that we have an opportunity to pivot to where we're now facing communities. We are turning ourselves back to the heart in which I believe God is calling us to, and that is for the flourishing, the prosperity of those, not monetarily, but the prosperity of the soul, of the morality, of the DNA of our communities. And so I think where we've been is we have been through much turmoil. The church has still stood, which is a testament, right? The church still stood. But where we can go is this is an opportunity. I'll say this: the COVID has really opened up another door for the church to really see a different reality in our world. Right? There's such divisiveness in our world, in our society, right? That we choose a side and we stick with it, and by me choosing a side, it seems to demonize or other the other, right? But the part that I love about our faith is that Jesus said that you and they will know you not by by how big your buildings are, not by how much food you've given out in your programs that you've created, not how many members are in your seats, but they will know you by your love. Love is a very, very powerful thing, but love also invites something that we are standing on, that is unity, right? Love invites the idea and the principle and the force of unity. It forces us to look at each other and, in spite of our differences, to still be at the table to understand. And so I think what the church has the opportunity now to make a severe pivot in the direction of complete unity. The church has been a place where has always been looked at for commonality, for communal organization. But now we have another opportunity, I think, to really, really press in to that which I believe is going to be pivotal for the holistic development of communities and neighborhoods. So I think overall, we have a bright future ahead of us. But it's going to take some tough conversations. It's going to take some honesty with ourselves, with some things that we've held on to for so long, our doctrines and our theologies that we hold on to for so hard and so long. We have to wrestle with those in order to really see the complete flourishing of our communities.
That is incredible, DeVante. And piggybacking on that, I had a conversation with another pastor not long ago, and he told me something that really resonated with me. That relationships is not in our job description as a pastor, which you already described the Great Commission. That's in a way, it is a calling to enter into bringing people into a relationship, right? But it is not stated in our job descriptions. You need to enter, especially relationship with other pastors. And so my question is twofold: is does it really matter for Unite? Is it really worth it for Unite, an organization like Unite, to pursue relationships and to pursue the flourishing of the city? And what would you say to other pastors who are too busy for relationships with other pastors, because entering into a relationship with other pastors especially feels like I'm slowing down. I have work to do, I have things to get done, and an agenda to fulfill.
Tito, that's great. The first thing that comes to my mind is actually another question: is how much do we really believe in the gospel? How much do we proclaim? Do we believe what we proclaim? And I think this is a hard question, because this is we understand the burden and the weight that exists on leadership and pastors, especially in our neighborhood, especially in our country. We understand the weight to show up, to provide the care for the flock. That is work, and that is grueling work. that requires time and energy, blood, sweat, tears. You can talk to church planners, you can talk to denominations. It is really, and I'll take full heat for this. I believe it is one of the toughest jobs in the world to be a shepherd, to be a leader in God's church. But what I also believe is that we talk so much about getting to, not reliving, but understanding and living out what the Church of Acts did, and being, in the community and being growing the church. That's a great word. We love growth. But the interesting thing about the Church in Acts that I always kind of go back to is that they had such a selflessness about who they were and how they showed up in the world, right? At one point, you read that in order to make sure that the community was whole, they would sell all that they had. They would relinquish their individual desires, their individual grievances for the sake of others. It was the epitome of what I believe is the relational task and mission that Christ has called us to do. We're not talking about which side of if you're a socialist or a capitalist. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the unadulterated desire and goal to live in the world as a Christ follower, which, as you said, Tito, drives us to other people, right? Unfortunately, we have created our churches in silos. We have created our churches sometimes with the idea of personality. Some of our churches have become personality driven. They have become centered around the idea of an individual. But understanding that was never the goal of Christ when building the disciples and the people that he came in contact with. It was never to build the individual, right? He who desires to be the greatest will be the least amongst you. This was never to see who had the biggest church or the biggest congregation. This was to see how much impact we can do when we all find ourselves in alignment with the same word, with the same idea of community, the same idea of the resurrection power of Jesus Christ, right? And so how do we live that out? We have to live that out with others. And as pastors, I think that's why Unite exists. That's why this is important. Because not only are we calling pastors and leaders in churches to come together, but we're also calling you into fellowship that's going to strengthen you. That's going to equip you with the things that you are going to vitally need in order to continue to do the work that you need to do. We're not trying to shut down churches or shut down your programs. No, we want to strengthen that. We want to strengthen your hands, right? We want to strengthen your bones so that way we can continue to do the work in our community that's so necessary and vital. So Unite is necessary. It is so necessary because it allows pastors to still do the work that they need to do in their congregations and local flocks, while still being held accountable and brought into community and fellowship with others who see the thriving of Christ in their communities as important and necessary.
You said two words, necessary and vital. Yet there's data that backs up what you're saying. Mm-hmm. Yet we don't believe it, and we continue to do my own thing in my silos or isolated. I was at a meeting yesterday with the Forsyth County Public School System. They are doing their strategic planning for the next 5 years. And I was intrigued, why just 5 years? And we were kind of evaluating the last 5 years and now planning for the next 5. And the conversation shift in just 5 years. That's why I'm glad that they were not making a 20-year plan, because the goals for the past 5 years have been about expectations and influence and accomplishment. And when we went through the SWOT analysis of the education in Forsyth County, in the threats, they had a high number of people uh, describing as a threat mental illness, mental health,
Mm.
and isolation. And remember, in the last couple of years, we went through COVID. So the goals for the next 5 years, they had to, mental illness and mental wellness wasn't even a part of a goal 5 years ago. Now they had to create one,
Mm.
right? To focus on that and how to bring wellness, which is in their world is flourishing,
Mm.
right? So there's data backing up the fact that we are not well. Imagine these are students. Now imagine pastors who, when you go to leadership, is one of the most isolated places in the world to be, and yet we don't think of ourselves that relationships, something as simple as relationship, is necessary. I would call it essential and vital of what you're saying.
Mm. Interesting enough, Tito, unfortunately in our world, especially in the church, we have really taken a hold of this corporate model for ministry. And while structurally it may look good, I think practically it can have more dangerous effects on our relationships than we may think. Right? If the only reason that we're going to plant churches is to grow our name, to grow our brand, I think we have to reevaluate what it is that we're actually looking at when it comes to being the hands and feet of Christ in the world, showing up in the world as believers. Because then, you get into these great end goals, right? I mean, 10,000 members. We want, a church here. We want a church here. But no one's really asked a question. Well, what do people need? It's not that they don't need church. It's do they need the expression that we say is church, right? Do they need another building, a church building with a Sunday morning service in their neighborhood, or do they need affordable housing? Do they need us to show up and start a service, or do they need us to provide a resource center? These are questions that come when you have these conversations with people and in community with people, which we're doing here in Unite. But I believe even more so, sometimes we get so bogged down with the destination, with the end, that we don't appreciate the journey that is life here. I just came back from Israel, and one of the most amazing things that I think I was able to experience and kind of hearing from this Jewish perspective was they kept emphasizing, enjoy this moment, enjoy. You're seeing, we're going to get to Calvary. You're going to be able to see the tomb. You're going to see, you're going to see the walls. You're going to be able to see Mount Olive. But don't miss what you're witnessing along the way. Don't miss the conversations that you're going to be having with other people here on the bus and as you're walking and that understanding that the journey is just as important as the destination. And I think if we lose the fact that this is a journey, that we're constantly reevaluating. That's why that 5-year plan had to come back around, right? We're constantly evaluating ourselves when we're faced with other realities, with other pressures in life. And we have to remain open to that in order so that we can be as effective as we can be as believers in this world. And so I think it's a culmination of so much. We really have to kind of detox ourselves from some of the things that we have built up, the clogged arteries of our hearts, right? We have really built up some very toxic that's blocked our ability to see others, blocked our ability to see the need. So I'm glad, for instance, that the county, the school system is saying, this is something we need to focus on now. This is important to how we see the thriving of those who we are accountable for, responsible for. And I believe that's the same for the church. We have to see ourselves as responsible and accountable to those which God has led us to and called us to, which that is the world. That's just not our congregation, that's the world.
That's good. And I was thinking, sort of weaving these thoughts together, just as far as, we're caring for the world, but then I think pastors have not always done a good job of caring for themselves, right? And caring for their family, caring for what's closest to them. And so it leaves them, as they're moving out into the world, it leaves them in this place of vulnerability, right? I'm just curious what you've seen there, and how you would speak to that.
Yeah, I'll say this, both as a black man in America, there was never a time that I realized that I needed counseling until I got to a point where I needed counseling. And it wasn't until someone really sat down and said, I think when I started seminary, one of the first things that they told us, and one of the first classes that I had was like, it's just a seminar, and that was the first thing they told us. Hey, go to counseling, seek therapy, work out things within yourself that you may not have seen, you may not have dealt with, because of the pressures and the realities in which you live and face. And so our pastors' mental capacity and their ability to see themselves and to know themselves, I believe it's a spiritual practice, and it must be taken just as seriously as your sermon writing, as your sermon series, as your journey as a whole being. Showing up is important, and it's a spiritual practice. And I think that is difficult, because unfortunately, shepherds, pastors are always kind of have been taught to kind of have that exterior hardness, right? To be able to protect and to defend the flock and be able to give, right, the necessary doctrine. And sometimes pastors just don't have that space to be able, or at least they're not aware that space is available for them. And so, I think for me, in my experience, it has really helped in my pastoral ministry to find counseling. That's number one, to do that regularly, but also to find other pastors who are experiencing and going through the same exact thing. It's very fascinating. I've heard this more times than I would like to, that there are pastors, and not just our small church pastors, which are vital, but there are mega pastors that I've known that have struggled, have followers, and have mega ministries and churches. When you sit down with them, they're alone, and they'll tell you they're alone. They tell you that they are dealing with this depression, they're dealing with anxiety, they're dealing with the pressures of ministry, and they don't have anyone to turn to. And this is quite a travesty in God's church. It's a travesty that is a reality. But I believe that there's hope in that. I believe that what we're talking about with Unite, that we're offering spaces for leaders and pastors to come and to replenish themselves. Yeah, we're going to talk about community development and engagement. We're going to help you, point you in the right direction. But don't miss the journey. Don't miss who you're around. Don't miss the brother, the pastor, the sister that's next to you who may be experiencing the same exact thing. If you open yourself up to hearing, to listening, to sharing, that there is much life. There's much refill and replenishing that comes from that. And he leads me beside still waters, right? What does that mean to come to still waters? If we allow God to lead us, God will lead us to these replenishing places, these troughs, these rivers, these streams that will refill us. And I hope Unite really does that for leaders and pastors, because it's so necessary. You have to get replenished. You have to be revitalized in order to continue to do what God has called you to do.
Wow. Did you hear that, pastors? It is necessary. It is vital.
This is why I'm so excited that the Unite board hired you. I feel like you just like resonate with so much of not just sort of like the external idea of programming, the external idea of engagement in community, but it's like the substantive character, heart work that God is doing in us, and that He is like leading us out into the world. And so, yeah, so there's like so much resonance there in so many ways. But I thought it would be fun for people who don't know you, and me included. I feel like I'm starting to learn some things about you, but even just some like things of like, tell us about your family for a second.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I am the husband of one wife, and I have a 4-year-old. We have a 4-year-old, and she is amazing. That's Noella. My wife's name is Danielle. That is my immediate family. My mother and my father are still here with us, live in Atlanta. My brothers have a younger brother as well. And so I could say it's a fun thing. One thing that I know has kind of helped me that's just engaging and fun is that me and my wife love to travel. We are travelholics in a sense. I think I got her started. I took her to her first country when we first met. Took her to Jamaica, and as soon as we landed, we were already planning the next trip. It was that type of vibe. So we love to immerse ourselves, and we typically go because of food. We always choose destinations depending on the cuisine that we desire to have. So we have been quite the places around the world so far, and we continue to just kick things off our bucket list.
So what's your favorite cuisine?
We love Thai cuisine. And because of her love for Thai, before we went to Thailand, it drove us even more to go to Thailand. And we went, and we do not have McDonald's in Thailand. Like you cannot go to any country and have what you can have, in the States. So, we had scorpions and ate the exotic cuisines of the place, and kind of try to live like locals, do cooking. This is a good recommendation.
So you did not have that spicy Thai Big Mac?
No, Tito. No. I don't. Listen, I don't even. Again, I'm not going to talk about McDonald's. I don't want to ruin their talk bad about them, but I don't want that. No, we had the street food. I wanted to see them cooking it in front of my face. So yes, we had the authentic vibe. So yeah, we love to travel, and we will continue to do that. I don't know if there's anything else interesting. Yeah.
And you like good coffee?
Yes, I am a coffee drinker. I was always afraid of coffee, Tito, when I was younger, because the age-old myth is that it stunts your growth. Now, when you meet me in person, you realize I am not a tall dude by any standard. So obviously that myth was wrong, because I never drank coffee when I was younger. Here I am,
I
just embrace it, and I'm going all in, right? I go all in. I love coffee. I love pour over blends. If you haven't have a chance, and I'm not coming for anybody, but if you just do the drip coffee, I'm sorry, you only get a little bit, but the pour over blends are amazing. The way that it soaks and extracts the flavor from the bean is amazing. So my best blend is a Ethiopian blend. If you ever try pour over blends, ask if they have some type of Ethiopian, some Kenyan, some Eastern African blend will always be just right. And do not put cream or sugar in it.
No cream and sugar?
No, you cannot put cream or sugar in it. You have to take the full dose of it. You have to take it all as it is.
Now we have to go to some good coffee shops that you need to introduce me to.
Yes.
And we gotta go to good Thai restaurants as well.
Yes, absolutely. Listen, if you
goodness.
meet with me, most likely we'll be at a coffee shop, and you get that experience. I'll baptize you in the pour over experience. We want people to connect with Unite, and we want people to, fall in love with the mission and vision. But we want to fall in love with you. We want to know you, and so I know for me, my calendar will be open for slots for leaders just to sit and have conversations. We're not trying to move you into being a supporter of Unite. This is just about you and how we can support you, how we can love on you as a leader. So some of the best connections that I've ever had, unfortunately, were not during Sunday morning. They were actually at coffee tables and, in intimate settings, one-on-one settings with people where I was able to really build connections and strengthen my faith. And so if that's you, if you're a leader, you're listening, you're connected to Unite because you're watching this now. Let's really connect. Let's really sit down and let's talk about you and talk about how we can support and help you.
If anything, they'll get a great cup of coffee out of it.
Get a great cup of coffee. Yes.
Well, we want to thank you, DeVante, for sharing with our audience today, with our incredible Unite Now audience today. And I am looking forward to more conversations with you in the future and to learn more from you and to continue to partner together with you in this new journey. And Unite Now audience, hopefully we'll get to see some of you tomorrow at our quarterly connects. I also want to make you aware of a new initiative for Unite called the 360 Flourishing Concentration. What that is a 3.5 hour training on community engagement basics. And our goal is to serve you, to serve pastors as they seek to mobilize their church into communities in very meaningful ways. So just to describe briefly what you can expect is we're going to provide you with the theology of flourishing, with access to real-time community stats, understanding cultural bias, and also best practices for dignified community engagement. And we want to invite pastors and ministry leaders in the community and any Christian who is interested in growing in their understanding and effectiveness in impacting our communities. So we're going to have our first training on March the 26th from 8:30 to noon. So go to our Unite website. You are going to see also emails that have been sent out, or you can go to our social media to learn more about this incredible initiative. So Unite Now, let me tell you, these are conversations at the intersection of leadership and flourishing, and we will see you next time.